What's up, guys? It's Mrjamvad, and today we are back on the Pokemon Showdown server, and I'm continuing my team building with Jam series. Today we're gonna be starting off with the new Pokemon that came out with Pokemon Home. The first of which is gonna be Celebi. So let's hop into this team, and I'm not trying not to make this too long, but also make it really in depth. If you guys would like longer versions, let me know. I have the Dragapult edition, and I have a lot of things coming. Just if I haven't been doing it, just say, Jam, you haven't been doing it, you haven't been doing it, you haven't been doing it. Keep reminding me until I remain consistent. So you can see all the Pokemon are there. Some of them are in, kind of like a unfinished product thing. But yeah. So what you're gonna find is that I'm going to be doing them pre-built. Now, mind you, no team is perfect, so let me preface it with that. No team is perfect. All teams will have issues. It's not the player. It's not the team. It's the player most times. Sometimes the team is just bad, but even then, a good team is a bad team in the hands of a person that can't use the team. So, just saying that because I always get, oh, you're weak to choice banded Jinx. You're like, dude. But yeah. So I wanted to try out a boosting Celebi, right? And whenever I try to team build, what I do is don't remember the exact words I use, and I'm not gonna repeat that in every team building video. Definitely check out the beginning of the Dragapult team building one. There's a playlist for everything on my channel, so definitely check that out. But if I recall correctly, I believe I started for you guys to. There are two ways of team. Well, not just two, but there are ways of team building, but you're generally going to be building around a particular thing, whether that be a play style, you want to use a stall team, whether that be around a particular Pokemon, whether that be around a particular Pokemon with a particular set, in the case of what this is, and I'll go into that in a sec. Or it could even be around a particular like field condition, like a Trick Room or Rain or something along those lines. You could try to build around that. But generally you want to have a centralized focus. That way you're not just throwing things on there haphazardly. Now that can work. It's not as smooth a process because there is no goal that you're orienting your Pokemon around, and you're not directing your focus to anything in particular. So I always say that obviously there are several pre-assumed build styles. Build in this case is referring to just the general nature of the Pokemon on the team. And when I say nature, I mean I use that for those who are newer, but the general attributes, let's say, of the Pokemon. So in this case, Celebi, the stat distribution for Celebi is one of a even stat distribution. It would be what we consider bulky, whereas Dugtrio is the complete opposite of that, in which it is very frail, right? So if you have a combination of 6 Dugtrio-like Pokemon or 5 Dugtrio-like Pokemon that operate in a very I hit you and I faint, or I hit you and I try to beat you before you beat me, then those Pokemon are more offensive. And if you have a lot of offensive Pokemon, then that's in the category of offense, which is one of the build styles that I was referring to. So in the case of Celebi, if you have a couple of these types of Pokemon, then it can be referred to as balanced because it's a very balanced build, and so on and so forth. And if you have some very passive, very difficult to kill style of Pokemon, then that's characteristic of stall, using passive methods to defeat the opponent, whereas offense uses active methods. Balance is a mixture of both. So you don't want to limit yourself to a particular play style. Just build with the intention of getting the outcome you want. Ultimately, that's what it all comes down to, getting the outcome you want. So that being said, let's get into the actual team. I just wanted to preface that if you're a vet team builder, cool, you don't have to watch the video if you can just skip along to where I start building. But I don't want to neglect those who aren't where you are. The world doesn't revolve around you, remember that. But I don't want to neglect those who are newer and isolate them because I'm like, you should know this. There's no reason you should. What kind of teacher would I be if I assumed you needed to know everything? So to the team, I decided to opt with the Celebi Calm Mind Psychic Aura Sphere, and how I came to the conclusion of the set I wanted to use was how I generally go about it is I scroll through the tier, and it's important to know the tier that you're trying to build in before you start building. Now, sometimes you can just get a person's team, or if the tier is new, if it's a new metagame, then you can just throw something together and figure it out through trial and error. That's also possible. However, your best teams will always come from a metagame that you already have played, and it doesn't mean you have to be a very good player. It just means you have to know what to expect, because in team building you're trying to orchestrate in the book I call it an army. You're trying to orchestrate an army that can go out into the metagame, which is like the battleground, and you're going to be facing opposing armies, but you have to know before you face those opposing armies what those opposing armies are going to be armed with. So if you go over there in armor and they're using poisonous gas to fight, you lose because you're ill prepared for poisonous gas. If you go over there with swords and they're using guns, you lose because you're ill prepared. So once you know what your opponent or what the metagame, the environment consists of, then you can appropriately determine what you need. And sometimes it is trial and error. That's perfectly fine. Don't be afraid of losing. Don't be afraid of trial and error. And it will sneak up behind you. Be careful, y'all. If you're avoiding games and switching alts not to lose points, you're afraid of losing. So he knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, so as I looked at the metagame, primarily OU, I thought about, well, Calm Mind is the style that boosts special attack and special defense, right? So, okay, what Pokemon after a boost do I need to KO? And what on the special side I'm going to be boosting, but on the physical side I'm going to be susceptible. So what are some things that can harm me on the physical side significantly? I saw Cinderace, Aegislash with Shadow Claw, Corviknight. So we're talking about things that are faster than me. Dragapult with Shadow Force. Hydreigon, there's Tyrant. I'm faster than T-Tar, so you might not OHKO it, but you have to get the conditions met to where you can win and kill it before you start setting up. It's a big mistake. I see people setting up very early without considering all the things. And if you want to learn more about how to battle, then definitely check out my How to Master Competitive Pokemon video series. That'll go in depth on all the things, or get my book. All these resources are there to help you with the battling aspect. Now for this month, I'm going to be focusing more on the team building aspect. So I chose the Celebi set because I figured it just provides the most coverage for the metagame. Now I could have went with Earth Power over Aura Sphere, Earth Power Giga Drain, Giga Drain Earth Power. There's several combinations of things, and it ultimately comes down to what you want. But I decided Psychic Psychic Stab was a little better than Grass Stab. You're able to muscle through certain Pokemon a little bit better. If it was Grass Stab with ground coverage, it's okay, but it's really difficult for you to muscle through certain things over time. And again, as the metagame unfolds, maybe for you, Giga Drain plus Aura Sphere. It's all about trial and error. I put out something that I think may work, and then I put it and bring it onto the field, which is the metagame, the ladder, and then I test and learn, edit, test and learn, edit. That's how you go about team building. Test and learn, edit. Okay, the way I view the world, Psychic isn't as good. So not because Jam has it, you still remember the Academy will promote thinking for yourself, right? Thinking for yourself. I provide the framework. That's why I don't really give you absolutes. I provide the framework, and you go out there and you test and learn. Open-mindedness and empowering players. The two core principles of the Academy. So, now that I've selected my set, I have to decide. Sometimes you can decide your EV spreads right after that, if you know exactly the set you want to use. And sometimes you can determine your EV spread after the team has been completed. In this case, I knew the EV spread I wanted. I determined the speed tier because I'm gonna be more physically, or Calm Mind is gonna be boosting my special defense. A lot of things I'll be able to out muscle by just boosting, and then over time beating them 1v1 that attack me on the special side. However, on the physical side, that's not the case. So I wanted to optimize to get as much bulk as I possibly could without being outsped by everything known to man. So I optimized it to where I outspeed Pokemon. Remember, you have to. This is why it's important to know your tier, because otherwise you wouldn't know what speeds to hit in order to outspeed relevant Pokemon. So I didn't want to be slower than Bisharp. Didn't want to be slower than Dracovish. Choice Banded Crunch would really hurt with Strong Jaw. I didn't want to be slower than Grimmsnarl. I didn't want to be slower than Toxtricity. I didn't want to be slower than Togekiss. Timid. I might like, that's another thing, right? If you find Togekiss rising in usage and you want to optimize it to where upon calm minding, it doesn't come in and just flinch you to death, and then you can get out 2 psychics before it can nasty plot up. Or you could calm mind again, it nasty plots, use psychic to a KO it, 1 air slash can't to a KO you, but now you're at +2 SPDEF and +2 special attack. So like, you could optimize it more. Again, just trial and error. We don't know how the metagame is going to develop. It's very difficult to predict a metagame before it happens. So we just got to see if things unfold and adjust. But for now, I just put it for Dracovish to maximize my defensive potential, max HP, and as much defense as I can bolster. After that, bold nature. Actually, I didn't check. Let me see, 288. Sometimes you can check for stuff like this. 274, 275. Let me see how much defense. Nope. Bold gives you slightly more defense. Because you can like try to pump more into SPDEF and then try to get that speed nature plus speed nature and all that into defense. My bad, but it doesn't work out there. So as far as the next couple members, how I go about it is like, okay, well, since on the physical side there's certain things that I don't enjoy facing, such as Cinderace, Incineroar to a degree, but you do have the super effective Aura Sphere, so if you get some damage on Incineroar, you can do that. Cinderace primarily, the fire type. I feel like there was something else, because you have to be wary of stuff like Obstagoon, and like you could tailor it to where you outspeed Obstagoon. There's all kinds of ways to go about it. Again, as the metagame develops, because I have to hammer these things in, because I still get the same questions, though there could be a new subscriber, so you always view it from all angles. But for now, as I'm looking at it, maybe I just considered Cinderace. I feel like I considered some other things too. The new Pokemon. So the new Pokemon I got released were because I might optimize this to where I outspeed Kyurem. Like they're just several ways. It could be max speed, max HP, just depending on what you keep running into and how the team is constructed. Cobalion, Terrakion, maybe Zeraora, but Zeraora isn't really doing anything to click. Celebi. There might have been other ones. But basically right now, Cinderace is my biggest thing. But also, Dugtrio wards off other Pokemon, right? So Exeggutor is going to be extra careful around a Dugtrio. They're not going to be willy-nilly with their Tyranitar. And Dugtrio, outside of all those other things, at times, Bisharp is another big one. Dugtrio has the opportunity to trap Bisharp. But it also can remove certain things that I find pesky that aren't necessarily the most trappable. Like Grimmsnarl, if it's not a boosting Grimmsnarl, a lot of times you can remove that. Though a lot of them are dual screen, but that's something that is possible to remove. You may be able to remove Obstagoon if it outspeeds, with the combination of Earthquake plus Reversal and whatever burn. There are just several ways to go about it. Toxapex even. Like, even though Celebi 1v1's Toxapex, the point of the matter is those are options you have. And there's several more Pokemon that I think the usage is going to start fluctuating because there are new things being brought in, and I think there are a lot of things in lower tiers that are underestimated that will see usage. So just to keep that in mind. But it was primarily for Cinderace, Bisharp, I'm pretty sure. And then if Dracovish gets out of hand, beat it down with 2, and then it's within range of Celebi. Or if I need some guaranteed damage on something, I get like things like those, right? So Dugtrio, and this team ends up being Stealth Rock. I just don't think hazards are that lethal in the current metagame, especially because we have new defoggers. Now we also have new Stealth Rockers, but a lot of old Pokemon that didn't have access to defog anymore now gets them. Heavy duty boots is an item. Hazards are just not as good as they used to be. Magic bouncers galore, all these things. So I decided not to double down too much on hazards, but more so focus on getting the Pokemon I need weakened. Well, I thought I wasn't recording for a sec, but getting the Pokemon. Oh my goodness, I made a mistake. But yeah, you saw the Dugtrio set. So, but yeah, get a Pokemon I need weakened, rather than trying to focus on hazards. So the reason that you don't want to generally put hazards on Dugtrio is because it's a very frail Pokemon. It's inconsistent in its ability to get up Stealth Rocks. So a lot of times it wants to just trap. So you're not going to ever really switch it in. Versus something like Seismitoad, which gets up rocks pretty consistently because it's bulky, or Clefable because it's bulky. Toxapex can take a lot of hits, so it can consistently get up a hazard. Mew. So these are all things you want to consider. But yeah. So as far as I'm going to focus more on the offensive end first. So in Celebi and support, as far as some things that I wanted to potentially hit so that I can so I could do a little better with Celebi that really does Celebi does a poor job versus is Aegislash. Now if it's just a special Aegislash, Celebi can 1v1 that with Calm Mind. It's just between crits and Spidef drops and whatnot, it's not as easy. That's why I have Mandibuzz and whatnot, but it's not as easy. So I just chose to decide to put something that will use the method that I referred to in the Dragapult video. So, generally when people want to weaken something, as I mentioned again, but I'll reiterate it here in case you haven't seen that one, is they think, okay, well, I have Celebi, let's say, use Corviknight as an example, right? Corviknight's a problem to my Celebi, therefore I want to try to get rid of that. So it's like, okay, cool, that's fair. So the question then becomes, well, how do you do that? And then the answer then becomes, okay, well, I do that. Most people conventionally would think, well, let me put an electric type on the team to hit Corviknight. However, if the opponent has a solid team, then he'll just switch, so you'll never really get to hit the Corviknight to free up Celebi. So what you'll need to do is use something that lures out Corviknight and then does a lot of damage. So I decided to go with Choice Banded Melmetal, because Double Iron Bash is such a ridiculously powerful move. You kind of have to be a defensive steel type / water type to take the hit. There are not too many fire types. Maybe if Arcanine raises in usage, depending on how bad Melmetal gets. But you kind of have to be a bulky water or steel type. So, if we're talking about steel types, Corviknight is really the core one. Corviknight and Aegislash. So if I'm like luring out Aegislash, well, Double Iron Bash slaps Aegislash anyway. That's just gonna hurt if it's not a defensive one. Well, Corviknight can eat it semi well. So I'm like, okay, if I try to lure out Corviknight, Stealth Rocks are up, and I hit it with a Double Iron Bash, it may get comfortable and start just, okay, I'm gonna just keep switching into Melmetal, and then once it's low enough, you hit it with a Thunder Punch, because most are Spidef. And that Choice Banded Thunder Punch coming off this attack, I think it does like 80 something. So it does a ton. After Stealth Rocks or a non-healed Corviknight, that's a dead Corviknight, which opens up Celebi. Or maybe it doesn't even need to be completely gone. It just needs to be at a range where it can't come in comfortably anymore. So you could even opt for Life Orb here, catch the Corviknight on the switch, and then as it tries to roost, you go for high or horsepower or superpower to pick up the KO, seeing as it's going to lose its flying type. So these are all options. But again, you want to go for something that lures in the thing that you're trying to remove. Sometimes that can be performed by overwhelming that Pokemon. That's using a Pokemon that has the same type. So Dracovish is very good at this. In rain teams, they used to do this a lot, where they'd have several water types to overwhelm something like a bulky grass type that generally will wall one of them. But if it's trying to wall 3 of them, they overwhelm it to the point where eventually you break through, and you just decimate their team. So that's another way, overwhelming versus luring. And trapping is another thing. Trapping in the case of Dugtrio or Magnezone, that's not in the game right now. So yeah, so decided to go with that as the next partner Pokemon. And Dragapult was one of the last members, but I'll explain in a sec why I went with Dragapult after that. But I decided, well, I am not prioritizing hazards, but I don't want my opponent to be able to prioritize hazards either. And also, I took a look at these. And I'm like, well, what do I want to be wary of, right? So I decided to go with Mandibuzz in this case for its knockoff utility, because the primary good flying types, especially the Spadef ones in the tier, are Mandibuzz and Corviknight. I think Togekiss is definitely going to rise in usage now that it gets access to Roost again and Heal Bell and all that stuff too. But definitely these 2 are the premier flyings. This because of heavy duty boost and its typing, and Corviknight because it's amazing, and just amazing. Steel type, no rock weakness, blah, 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 all that. So in Mandibuzz's case, what's critical is the fact that it provided something for Hydreigon on, like, say, a sub-variant of Hydreigon. This was prior to Dragapult being a member on the team, but even if it was, still, because as it was structured, I was very susceptible to dark and ghost type moves, right? So Aegislash clicking Shadow Ball, Dragapult clicking Shadow Ball, which are very fast and very strong. Gengars, Hydreigons, as I mentioned. I'm not classifying too many of the knockoff guys. Yeah, because again, this team is meant to decimate. It's not a very bulky team. Mandibuzz is really the only dedicated wall per se, but it's not a very bulky team. Some would classify this as bulky offense, so to speak. But yeah, it's really kind of aimed for these 2 to do its thing, and melmetal to just blow holes through the opponent when it gets the opportunity. And I structured it with my team, with my viewer base in mind, because I know people do especially as you're getting better at the game. I find people tend to gravitate towards Volturn because it's just a simpler way of playing, and it requires a lot less thought. One big flaw in my previous team building just years ago and in recent times is, I use my own eyes to build. So I, obviously know how to play this game really well. So I know how to orchestrate a team with no momentum. So I don't necessarily think about momentum when I'm playing. But I remember when I wasn't as good as I am now, momentum and volt turning and U-turning were important things. So while you're in that paradigm, over time you're gonna learn how to exit that paradigm. But it's a necessary step. So for me to then say, okay, well, I'm just gonna build my perspective, and if you don't know how to use it, you can't play. That's not what I'm consciously thinking, but I mean, if I'm building it with my perspective in mind only, then it's kind of what I'm saying indirectly. So I tried to incorporate a volt turn aspect to this, and I think that'll go really well with the banded melmetal because of just how strong it is. That's gonna be a key thing, and then Subcurum just gets slapped, so they can't really do all that stuff. So Dragapult, Dragon Dance gets slapped. Excuse me. So I incorporated the Volturn for you guys. If I was building it solely for me, would I have gone this route? Maybe not. But yeah. So speaking of Volturn, just quickly run over to Mandibuzz. It's gonna be heavily Spadef. I could have sworn I put EVs on this. Heavily Spadef. You can play around with the EVs. Those are just general EVs. Spadef primarily for Hydreigon, as I mentioned. primarily for the special attacking ghost and dark types. Keldeo, Terrakion, Cobalion, all those Pokemon are going to be coming back. Manabuzz doesn't like any of the Swords of Justice that are coming back. Doesn't like facing them because they get justified boosts for the physical ones, and they take nothing from dark type moves. I'm trying to remember all the mons. I know Venusaur is coming back. It's important for that. Blastoise. But yeah, essentially, eats up the ghosts and acquires momentum through U-turn. So sub Hydreigon, you break the sub U-turn out, and then bingo, you can position yourself. Or if you don't break the sub, the next member on there, well, that was the last member, but Dragapulse Infiltrator has Dragon Dart, sub DD. You can mess him up with that. You could go Dragapult is so flexible that you can go several different options there. I always try to make the team very flexible so you can it's not so restrictive that you can't adjust things, because it's just a skeleton. But my defensive counterpart with the Manabuzz is going to be Rotom in this case. And the reason I went with Rotom Wash here is because, one, I wanted the Volt Switch aspect, but also Rotom Wash does something very, very well, that actually I'm not going to pretend like I knew this beforehand, but I thought about this after the fact, after putting Dragapult on the team, because initially I had Toxic sub, you're gonna 1v1 like a Seismitoad, but I'm like, well, how important is that really? Like in the grand scheme of things, am I just making a set to make a set, or I'm trying to be cool or something? So I thought about the practicality of what I'm trying to achieve. So if I'm like, okay, well, I want Dragapult to do work, right? If you think about the things Rotom Wash base in, there's Seismitoad, Will-O-Wisp for the damage. After that, the leftovers and negates it and blah blah blah. But hear me out and follow my trail of thoughts. So Seismitoad could potentially get burnt. There are several ways to go about this. You could actually opt for Toxic over Thunderbolt. You're gonna understand why I have Will-O-Wisp, Volt Switch, Thunderbolt here in a sec. But you can opt for that. That's definitely an option. But yeah, so going back to the if you think about what it based in, Seismitoad, which runs Earthquake, and Ferrothorn, which runs Power Whip or Gyro Ball. It baits in things like Clefable, but those can be Volt Switched on. Baits in things like Sylveon, those can be Volt Switched on, freeing up Melmetal, so on and so forth. So, but the two primary ones I want you to focus on are Seismitoad and Ferrothorn. And if you think about sub DD Dragapult, generally those two Pokemon, if Ferrothorn has Gyro Ball, or if it has Gyro Ball, or Seismitoad has Earthquake, if they're burnt, Dragapult sets up on them, because they're taking burn. I'm getting leftovers on the Phantom Force turn, so I'm getting Phantom leftovers. Sub, if he's behind a sub, Phantom Forces gets leftovers that turn. It comes back, it gets leftovers that turn. But if it's burnt, then I might have to tweak the EVs. I don't know, but it's very likely that Earthquake from a burnt Seismitoad can't even break the sub of Dragapult, right? Ferrothorn, Gyro might still break the sub, but he only has 8 between Phantom Forces he's using to substitute. He's like, you switch out, you can very quickly stall out Ferrothorn out of its Gyro Balls, and plus it's just weak. It's now just very weak. So it might just be straight up setup fodder because it doesn't want to go for. It sometimes has knockoff. All these things to be considered for sure. But that's just something to keep in mind, how it assists Dragapult in more easily setting up. In Dragapult's Infiltrator ability, and it's just his typing is very good for the Swords of Justice that are coming out, because other than Terrakion, if the Terrakion is choice, then we're looking at setup fodder for Dragapult. Now you can opt for Specs. Specs helps. The reason why I wrote him as Thunderbolt here is for sub bulk up Corviknight, which would definitely give this team a lot of problems. In fact, Rotom's the only thing that can beat it. So you can opt for Infiltrator Dragapult Specs to deal with sub bulk up, or you can opt for Substitute Hex, which also deals with Subcorviknight, and Hydreigon. This is just my favorite set, so I'm definitely biased towards this set. And for the mentions I read, the reasons I mentioned earlier, but Sub-Hex equally as effective here. You know, you could argue it's more so, right? But I think Sub DD is just lead. Oh, they're all just Gyarados is a good Pokemon, man. Specs, Sub, all of these are options. So again, test and learn, figure out what works for you. With that, if you have subs, if you have Specs or Sub-Hex, that can allow you to run something else. So you could run Toxic to just remove Seismitoad altogether, which helps Melmetal. So it's all unison, it's all teamwork, knocking off items with Mandibuzz so you can open up for Celebi. You know, it's just all the unison, that teamwork, baby. And with the Volt Switch and the combination, it's just gonna be a beautiful thing, man. It's just gonna be a beautiful thing. Jirachi's obviously in the metagame now as well. But offensively, Jirachi is gonna be too much of a problem to most teams. It's just whether you're going to be struggling with it defensively, and perhaps Sub-Hex might be the way to go for you. Like, again, Academy, 2 pillars of the Academy. Encourage open-mindedness and to empower players. So I now encourage you to go out there, be open-minded, and be open to losing. When you lose, as you must, as you're learning, really look back on what you could have done differently. And after, you know, say 10 to 15 games with the team as is, you can then determine, okay, am I running into a problem because of the set? And then you adjust and adapt. That's how you team build. Adjust and adapt. Really, the core at the core, team building is just orchestrating something, adjusting and adapting. That's it. So yeah, I probably could have done I could have done this Thunder Punches for Corviknight, as I mentioned, Toxapex, Bulky Waters that don't take on Double Iron Bash. So primarily for Ferrothorn, which walls me otherwise, and High Horsepowers for Aegislash, and other steals that may rear their ugly heads. Melmetal is fun, man. I think it's going to be a really interesting kind of addition to those fat mons that you see like Reuniclus. Just come in and bash him, and just put him in the dirt. The metagame is going to be very interesting. The more we get, we're going to have the Poke Home, I keep wanting to call it Pokebang, Pokemon Home metagame. Then we're going to be having the Isles of Armor metagame, then Tundra. Oh man, it's gonna be a fun year, y'all. Fun year for Pokemon. Thank you all so much for listening. Hit the like button to let me know, because I mean, if you guys aren't even watching it or liking it, who am I kidding? I'm still gonna upload it for those who care. But for those who do enjoy it, definitely leave the like. 2 reasons: because it lets me know how you guys feel about the content, and secondly, because some of you might not comment. You're not like maybe not the commenting type. And secondly, it also allows for me for the video to raise in popularity. It helps the growth of the channel. And it allows for other people who want this information to be able to get access to it. So thank you again, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Might do Melmetal next. Peace.